Welcome
Let's
back
go.
to Writing the West podcast, where we interview some of the top names in Western writing today. I'm your host, Tyler Offhammer with Cowboys and Indians magazine. Today we're joined by novelist Jamie Harrison, a Montana resident and author of 7 novels. Her works include the acclaimed Jules Clement mystery series set in Montana, which was recently reissued along with the latest installment, The Riverview, longlisted for the Reading the West Book Awards. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you, Tyler.
And you're joining us, as you said, from Montana. What's the weather like in mid-December?
It is too warm. It's abnormally warm and incredibly windy, which is what Livingston's known for. The freeways shut down.
There you go.
I
Wow,
just
wow.
walked my dogs and nearly blew away.
Lots of time for a writer, though, for sure.
Yeah, sure. But 80 to 90 miles an hour. Yeah, it's really going today. So I hope we keep our connection.
There you go. Well, you've lived in Montana for a long time, and
Yeah.
at what point did that area of the world simply stop being a place where you lived and become a place where you felt like you could build your stories about?
Pretty early, actually. I had come here when I was a kid. In my teens. We had friends out here, and I loved it. I simply loved it. And I was working in New York, and I was tired of my job. I was in my late 20s, and I had somebody to run away with me, and we moved out. And pretty quickly didn't want to leave again. Didn't have any interest in moving back to the city. There'd been some vague idea of actually having a career that paid money and going on to LA.
Mm.
And we just stayed. And I started writing the mysteries within 5 years. I just tried to sort of suck up the knowledge of the place and the stories of the place, and just wanted to tell those.
Yeah, yeah. And growing up, did writing seem inevitable to you, or was it something, as some other writers have told me, they kind of had to fight for?
Actually, it seemed like the last thing a sane person would want to do. My father was a writer named Jim Harrison. He wrote, among other things, Legends of the Fall, and it truly seemed like a bad way to make a living. I worked as an editor. Uh, I worked as a cook. I did a lot of things, and I was working as an editor out here for a small press called Clark City Press that did hunting and fishing and literature, all sorts of things. Had a good reputation, and we went out of business, and I needed to make a living. And Livingston in the late 80s, an editing job at the paper paid $3.50 an
Wow.
hour. So I thought I'd always read mysteries. I obviously knew how to write, knew how to edit, knew how the business worked a little too much, and just tried a mystery and got away with it.
Yeah, it always gets in the way of good writing, doesn't it? Having to eat and pay bills.
Yes, 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 it does. It's still getting in the way of good writing. Yeah.
Well, as you mentioned, you've done a number of different jobs and had all those different experiences. And how did those experiences help to shape the way you write your places and characters now?
Um, well, if you've had a fully lived life, there's a lot to pull from.
Mm.
Even if, I mean, somebody might look at me and say, "Oh, she's lived in Montana for 40 years. What does she know?" You can know a lot living here. And I've traveled a lot. I think doing a variety of jobs. I think
Mm.
having to think on your feet. I think living in a place where, at least until recently, it wasn't sort of everybody talked to everybody else.
Hmm.
When I moved out here, before I had children, when I could just go sit down in a bar, everybody talked to everybody else. The university professor was sitting there, the plumber was sitting there. We all knew each other, we all ate together. It was a kind of a wonderful, idyllic little moment in time. And it's
Mm.
slightly less so now because of the pressures that everybody in the West is facing.
Right.
We have become very popular, and I can't criticize people for wanting to live here because I did exactly the same thing 40 years ago.
Right.
But it's changed.
Right.
Everything's changed in America, right? But
Right. Of course.
but I don't know, you learn a lot talking,
Yeah.
just talking to people, having to be volunteering in the school kitchen,
Yeah.
going just, I don't know, going to funerals. God, I've been here a while.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
hear stories.
Well, and you mentioned your father, Jim Harrison, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to a couple of second generation writers like Anne Hillerman, and her father was Tony Hillerman,
Yeah.
Louis L'Amour's son Beau. We've had on a couple of times, and it's always so interesting to follow the paths of children of great
Mhm.
writers. And um, one, how did that help you in your writing career? But also two, what challenges did that present for you along the way?
Well, he was a poet, he was a novelist, he was a screenwriter. The immediate challenge was comparison.
Mm,
How are you going to do this? And people would sort of pat me. And the way I went about doing it was to write mysteries,
mm,
to distance myself from literary fiction while still trying to write as well as I could.
hmm
And that worked. It was certainly easier to make a living when I first started writing. I got really relatively large advances for my first few books. More writers made more money back then.
hmm
So it was a sort of a calculated bet and it worked. It was great. And then for about 15 years, it just didn't work. I didn't want to write more mysteries. I did scripts with my father, but I'm sort of wandering away from your question, and that is how did it distance? Well, I worked with them too.
Right.
It doesn't really. You just, if you like your parents,
That helps.
you learn to adapt, you know.
Right. Right.
And
Well,
it was,
and
yeah, go ahead.
please, no, please continue.
It's great growing up with smart people. I mean, I
Right.
grew up surrounded by writers,
Right.
really wonderful writers. And so the romance of it certainly was dented,
Yes.
but the fun of it was not.
Right. Well, and so much of your stories revolve around these small towns.
Right.
And what I always love about small towns, I live in one too, is they're so dense with history, cultural memories of that particular place, and it's something that permeates every aspect. And was that something that you drew on from personal experience? And what draws you to these more contained areas of the world?
Everything's there.
Yeah.
Everything's there. And I think it's a couple of my novels actually have sort of moved around more.
hmm
The straight novels, something called The Widow Nash, but even that was ultimately set in turn of the century Livingston.
hmm
Um, I would love to write a globetrotting book, and I've started a few of them, especially when I'm writing here in, say, February, right?
Yeah.
It's a little less interesting. Um, but because I'm writing a series, there's a richness of detail. There's no possible way I'm going to run out of crimes or
No.
murders, even if I'm sort of pushing believability with the death count for a town
Yeah.
that's population 5,000.
Well,
And
and
also, I mean, I think a lot of my plots are you bring your world with you here.
mhm.
The people I'm writing about have lived elsewhere. The people who they're investigating have lived elsewhere. The past is never past.
Right. Well, and I think the thing that always strikes me and a lot of other readers with more centralized and localized thrillers and crime novels is that everything seems to hit closer to home, obviously, both literally and figuratively.
Right.
Characters you come to know and love are potentially in danger. They might not make it
Sure.
through the end of the book versus a Dashiell Hammett novel where all these characters are just thrown together
Right.
willy-nilly. But one thing that always strikes me as interesting, and especially in the Jules Clement book set in Blue Deer, Montana, if the area feels like a character of its own, it's got kind of a force. It's like I love to think of it like a tornado swirling all these characters around
Yeah,
and
right
mixing
now.
them up. So,
Yeah.
when you set out, especially to create a place and a setting for these stories, what is the purpose and how do you see that through to the end?
You're asking me as I'm trying to finish the last third of a novel, and I'm having so much trouble with it, and I'm
Ugh.
asking myself the same question. Um, it's to show how complex people's worlds are.
Mm,
To have I like to bust as much as possible expectations, and I especially like doing that about the West. I like writing about a town that is not a traditional cow town.
right.
We have cows, we have ranchers, they're all great, but it's not a traditional place. So I guess to add complexity, to make people realistic. Everybody does know everybody out here, but it's always surprising there are some people you don't know. And it's
Yeah,
sort of a shock to the system, especially if you're a cop, probably, which Jules no longer is.
right.
I kind of backed away from that a bit. His wife still is. I don't know, the complexity of the place, the fact that you
Yeah.
can work in the history. He's an archaeologist, so I'm working in the past too.
Yeah.
And it might seem short out here, but it's pretty rich in injustice and all sorts of there's nothing new under the sun. And most of the get rich quick schemes, most of the murders, all of that, it's all sort of eternal. It could be in New York,
Right.
it could be here.
Well, and one thing that strikes me in not only the true history of the West, but also in fictional stories as yours or a Craig Johnson or Anne Hillerman story, it always seems like a place where people go to reinvent themselves or at least attempt
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Um, and from the gold rush, to the charlatans and gambling hall owners of the 19th century and now to the world today, like yourself, to go out there and change your future course. Do you think that that has rung true in your own life in the West? And do you also think that presents the challenge of um, making it harder to escape once you get there?
Uh, Maybe. I do think that the defining characteristic of the West is reinvention. I
Hmm.
completely agree with you. I think that's the thing that runs through everything. And the people who think that they're not reinventing it and that they've been here forever, well, what is forever? I'm sorry, you have
Right,
not. It's
right.
the most annoying facet of some corners of the West. I don't think it makes it hard to go away. I know, I don't know, I'm comfortable with wandering.
Yeah.
The next book I'm writing is going to have a chunk that's written in LA in the 20s. It's going to follow the
Wow.
characters from my two straight novels, but that's all tied too. Part of what's fascinating out here, when I first moved here, a lot of people have passed now, but the first people I knew out here, the older people, would talk about getting lobsters on the train every week,
Wow.
regularly delivered, oysters. I mean, the level of intricacy out here and of life and the richness of things was amazing to me and
Hmm.
still is. Butte, Montana. I'd love to write about Butte because there was no richer place in the world. But yeah, I want to escape it sometimes. I
Good
think I
for a
I think I
vacation.
dropped the beginning of your question, so
No,
take me
no,
back.
you did beautiful. You agreed with me in that the West does encourage
Yeah.
reinvention in a lot of ways. You mentioned The Widow Nash.
Mhm.
That was your first major publication, if I'm not mistaken, and went on to win the Reading the West Book Award. And I'd
Right.
love to know just what was the impetus of that first novel? So many writers I hear from, that first one's such a slog sometimes. Was that the case for you, and what was that process like?
Well, I'd written four mysteries by then, but
Okay.
that had been decades earlier, 15 years
Okay.
earlier. I was doing research for a documentary on Butte,
Okay.
um, working on that, and reinvention is actually what it's about.
Mm.
So thank you. I was noticing, doing photo research and looking in the archives and noticing how many newspaper stories there were in, say, 1905 about somebody appearing in town. Where had he come from? He said he was from here. Or Mrs. So-and-so, who claims to be widowed,
Mm.
seems to be keeping company. Basically, I wanted to have a woman run away.
Yeah.
And I came up with a character who comes from a somewhat troubled background who gets off one train and sort of zigs around the west of the time, which was easy to do, goes down to
Mm.
Denver, goes here, goes there, and eventually decides to disappear into this town. And she has another name that she's using, and her past follows her. And it's more, yeah, it's a historical mystery.
Right, right. And it ultimately settles in Montana.
She
Um,
settles, yeah,
and
here on
what,
a windy day. Yes.
yeah, along with obviously your connection to Montana, why did you feel like that story needed to ultimately land in Montana, and what was the benefit in doing so for you?
Well, I loved reading about the period here. I mean, you got to know that a lot of writers just get lost in what they want to research,
Hmm.
right?
Oh yeah.
People
Yep.
do. It does. It's a rabbit hole. Um, I wanted to sort of explore the idea that sometimes it's braver to run away, to go, it's reinvention. One more
Yeah.
time. You're going into a new world and you're becoming yourself. Um, I wanted to talk about just how sophisticated it was out here at the time,
Right.
in a way. Good
And
guys, bad guys, money.
when, as you said, The Widow Nash is a little bit different than your more recent novels,
Right,
and then the historical setting. Obviously, the character is much
right.
different than who you're writing now. And how did, looking back on The Widow Nash, how did that story shift your trajectory into the later books that you wrote?
I think they're a little different. I think I'm playing a little less for laughs. Not a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
Jules is still, he's sort of almost a character in those books too. I've always written about he's an archaeologist.
Hmm.
He's sort of gone back to it. So the past is always coming up.
Yeah.
And things perhaps that I looked up for Widow Nash and the other book I'm still using. Newspaper clippings, this, that, a crime I thought of
Hmm.
can be something that plays out today.
Right. Yeah, and that's a common thread, like you said, that I see in a lot of my interviews with writers. Historian and author go hand in hand in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
become an expert.
Well, and you want to use stuff. I
Right.
mean, you literally, I'm trying to think of who I saw an interview with the other day who was actually literally, she owned up to, or he did, um, finding all these things he wanted to write about and then simply smushing them together. He had to come up with a plot to make it
Yeah.
work. And I've done that a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I want to start with a floating body in a lake in this place where I'm camping today on a
Yeah.
windy day. And what's it all about then?
Exactly.
And I want to end it this way.
And I
So
think the biggest thing I've noticed is that interest and curiosity is what readers attach to as well, because they have that same feeling in that same setting in that same scene.
sure. I am absolutely sure that Tony Hillerman, I'm trying to think of the mystery it was where he had the pegged frogs. They were
Mm.
tied up right just far enough away from a puddle so that they died.
Oh.
He comes upon the scene, and I know he thought that up in the middle of the night and then came up with a plot to fit it,
That's right.
character to
What a
fit it.
scene.
So, yeah,
Your
yeah.
other book, The Center of Everything,
Mhm.
was your next novel, and a little bit different in that it shifts into kind of an interior world of this woman, Polly, and she's got kind of this fractured sense of time. Again, going back to history in the past, and what compelled that story in regard to the one you had written prior.
I wanted to keep writing about the people who are in Widow Nash.
Mm,
The characters there appear as her grandparents. Um, but I also wrote that spurred on Polly's modern day life in this, basically, essentially, this town now. Um, one summer when a friend drowned,
mm,
and every day I would leave the house, there'd be a helicopter overhead
yeah.
looking for this kid. And that was sort of the drumbeat of the thing, because there is a modern murder. There is a body in the river. Did she just drown or was she killed? Um,
Mm.
and I used that to go back to an old murder that happened when she was a child. She's had a head injury and she's questioning her memory. We all question our memory now. You will too someday. But I just wanted to play with it. But
Yeah.
the parallels make her think of the past, yada yada.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, how
Um,
did you, with historical fiction, for instance, of course, there's opportunity for flashbacks, flash forwards, what have you. But in a story like yours, it can become, I'm sure, quite complicated to line everything up and kind of see
right.
where the end is going. How did you do that with the center of everything, and what's your process like for, yeah, do you have a tent post at the end you're always trying to get to, or?
Yeah, I think, well, yes. I don't think the ending changed much. It is, I mean, certainly I edit. I edit a lot. I
Hmm.
have an editor who is a good editor. On that book, he at some point we were talking and he thought I was laughing and I was in fact crying about cutting 60, but I was hysterical. I was laughing. He was making me laugh. He was saying, "You can't have this. That's a piece of, it doesn't work here." He's a good editor. Timing is really key. So yeah, there is a lot of time spent moving chapters around, which means you
Right,
have to rewrite the chapter. I
right.
believe in editing. I think you come up with a better book. I also believe in cutting, cutting, cutting. I don't know about you, but almost every book, however good, can use it, and a lot of them don't get it anymore
Right.
because there are fewer editors.
That's true.
So,
Fewer good
but
editors too.
but balancing and going with the rhythm of a book, that's what'll make things. You want that click at the end of a chapter,
Mm,
even if you're not being overly stagey about it.
right.
You know, your
Exactly.
beginnings, your endings, your breaks, there is a kind of a rhythm that you try to get to.
And as you said, with the center of everything, it's set in Livingston and a more modern era versus the Widow Nash, or at least parts of it. How different was it writing about an actual place that you knew versus a historical version, like with the Widow Nash?
I was more careful.
Mm.
I have neighbors. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
sort of learned to not shoot my mouth off quite so much. Um,
Change the
but you
names.
know, all kinds of fiction. I mean, everybody knows Blue Deer is Livingston,
Right.
basically. It's just a
Right.
smaller version of it. And I have become more careful. And also, in my first novel, I actually, there's a character who's very clearly, not faithfully, but clearly an ex-employer.
Mm.
Um, and and I shoot him. So it was fun, unfortunately, for a lot of people in town, and he got over it. It's always fun to use fragments of people. Yeah,
Right.
but I'm careful. I try to distance things, and I also don't try to anymore. I'm really clear that I'm moving the landscape around too. I'm not going to keep everything happening on this one true creek.
Right.
I mean, and people can get mad at me, but I say right in the beginning, I have scrambled the geography, so leave
Right.
me alone. You know, no, there is no McMillian Creek. Get
Right.
over it.
Your protagonist, Jules Clement, is a reluctant lawman, and now in later books, more of an archaeologist, private investigator. He's kind of this person who's never really at home in any role. Why did that protagonist feel right for you in that series?
Probably because I zipped around jobs.
Mm,
Probably because I didn't want to fully commit to being an archaeologist, or being a cop.
mm,
There's a level of, I didn't have a full level of comfort with being sure that I could um, portray a police officer realistically, even when I started writing them, and less so as time went on. I
mm.
wasn't sure. I want somebody who wasn't fully comfortable as being a cop, if
Right.
that's fair.
Right.
I wanted a liberal switch who gave it a shot because his father had been a cop, who wanted to do it for all the right reasons, but might feel a level of discomfort with a lot of the working with the way government works, with the way
Right.
poverty works. I was married. I am married to somebody who was a defense attorney
Oh,
for
okay.
40 years,
Wow.
who's now working for the county prosecuting. But I hear a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, for
So
for sure. Do you think it lended any flexibility? Because, we see so many, police procedurals where, the
mhm.
cop either has to do what you would hope police do in real life and go by the letter of the law, or if they go against it, then they're kind of tarnished for the rest of the series. Do you think that gave you a little flexibility to kind of jump him around a little bit?
I think it did, and I think being in a small town also
Mm.
did. I
Right,
mean, I
right.
there's a there are so many stories in any small town about police departments,
You're right,
sheriff's departments, and
right.
stuff like that. And you know, quality and training of officers comes and goes and mostly goes now. They don't, there's just not a lot of training out
Right,
there. I
right.
wanted to kind of play with that too. I wanted to be realistic while giving myself, yeah, some wiggle room.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and what I
Yeah.
thought was so interesting with your latest book, The Riverview, which came out in 2024, Jules is a new father, and building a home in, and a destabilized time and
Right.
area of the world. And, you know, I'm sure it's always a big decision in any book to add more family, because with more family comes more potential liability. But why was it in Riverview that you decided to make that life change?
Well, in the last, when I first wrote them, I wrote four in a row, and basically at the end of the fourth, made it clear he was going to quit.
Mm,
Um, and I guess I wanted to be realistic. I didn't want him to be that kind of lonely, classic alcoholic cop. It frankly just bores the shit out of me. Um, I wanted him to have a life. The problem I sort of struggled with was it's really hard to write an exciting mystery series with a married cop. I
yeah,
wrote four books where I had a lot of fun putting Jules through it in terms of women, in terms of misbehavior. It
right.
was wonderful. Bar
Yeah,
fights, you name it.
yeah,
Um, and I wanted to try to see if I could get away with him settled down. But really, it was
yeah,
just realistic. I mean, he's the
right.
kind of guy who would want to be married, would want to have a kid,
Yeah, yeah,
and would have trouble adjusting to both those things, like most people do.
right. Exactly. Well, and in other stories, especially ones that are grounded in one area, like the Pickett series or the Longmire series, we see so many different things arise from these small towns, like you said, whether it be tourism or law enforcement, and then you have outside like mining laws. And I spoke to CJ
Yeah.
Box recently, and we talked about these data centers, that are going up out west. Where do you get your inspiration for, maybe the issues that you put into your books, and or is that something that just kind of comes naturally?
Um, well, they're the issues that we run into living out here.
Mm,
You know, the railroads, the
yeah,
mining law of 18, what, 76 or something, which is still a problem. So many themes in the West for the last 150 years have had to do with mineral rights. I did that in a book. I don't know. I guess it come to me often, an incident comes to me, and then I just want to explore all the ways land hoodles can be done out here. You know, all the ways. This is why people kill each other out here. They kill each other for land. They kill each other for what they see as love.
yeah.
They kill each other for money. They kill each other for family reasons. You know, they all work.
Everybody has a reason.
Everybody has an excuse. Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody does. Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
Well, and
But
and
in terms of the issues, they're sort of timeless. You know, new people moving in, people not understanding the community, that sort of thing.
hmm
People thinking they own a community
all right.
and pushing back that way.
Well, and
Go
and you
ahead,
just
sorry.
you no you just brought up the killing, for instance, and there being a book centered around a former cop, and in the first books, obviously there is crime. And one thing that struck me about your books was that it's not sensational in the way some, mass-produced thrillers might be. It was more uh, intimate, with the people involved in your stories. And how do you approach writing crime without kind of exploiting it and becoming sensational?
I don't know. I think you just go by your gut when you're going too far. I
Mm,
mean, every once in a while, just now in this book, I read about a murder and thought, oh, why didn't I do that?
Yeah,
It would be so simple, just
right,
simple, linear, cause effect, revenge, jealousy. Um, I don't know. I just get, I have trouble writing about dead children. I have
right.
trouble. Some of
Yeah,
it's an uneasiness, and just a desire to not to be realistic, not be sensational, but really try to have something that punches
yeah,
and or is funny. I mean,
right.
sometimes I want to be Carl Hyacin, and sometimes I wish I was, Lee Childs, but I'm not. Um,
That's great. I love it. Well,
but
and
they're all great. Yeah.
that's right. Well, and I'd love to talk to in our last section of the interview about the writing today, Western writing today, and kind of the genre as a whole. And um, it's changed so much, obviously, not only since its inception with, early frontier stories and dime novels and on into the 50s and 60s of that kind of traditional Western paperback. And I think now it's expanding even more so with TV and movies. Do you think that the West, as a genre, is being taken seriously, and not so much as just a genre as it once was?
Um, I think it always kind of has been. I don't know, but I think of a Western as a John Steinbeck novel too. You know
Right, yeah,
what I mean? I grew up reading everything from John Steinbeck to My Friend Flicka,
yeah,
and some Louis L'Amour's, and Raymond Chandler.
yeah.
I think of the West still too as including LA and
Oh,
the
yeah.
Valley and
The
all the
original
weirdness
West,
that goes on there.
the Gold
Yeah,
Rush
the
era.
original West.
Yeah.
In this next book, I want some part of it is set in like 1918 in LA, and I
Oh,
wanted
wow.
to do something with some of the Westerns that were being made there at that time about the
Wow.
incredible mix of, one movie set in
Yeah.
Egypt right in the next slot with a Tom Mix Western. Um, I think I think Western writers get a little ghettoized. I think that it's easier to be a mystery writer in the West than a literary writer in the West,
Hmm.
possibly.
Right.
I think that there's a tendency to typecast everything Tom McGuane writes as sort of a tough guy, bare bones Western rancher. I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it's not entirely fair. Obviously, there's a lot of wildly successful people out here, but I think they're regarded as still as other by New York.
Yeah.
They just are.
Well, and I
My
think what you're saying is almost have to look at the Western with a larger lens,
Yeah,
um, to encapsulate. Because I think we've pigeonholed so much of it into that 50s, early 60s era. It was so
Bonanza.
prominent. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
It became
Yeah,
so
yeah,
prominent and so culturally
yeah.
identifiable, that's what you immediately think when you think of Western. But a lot of the books we've tried to do on the podcast tried to shuck that a little bit, and
Mhm.
but also, like you said, um, I think it's so interesting of people who, I know you've been there forever, but maybe who weren't from a certain area that take that area on as their own and have this
Yeah.
reinvention, and then are able to write that perspective that was so unique to the West. How do you think, ju juggling off that last question I just asked, is there a way to define success as a Western writer today if, even some of the top names maybe are still viewed as the other in 2025?
To define success, I think just doing the best job
Mm,
possible, whether you're writing genre or you're writing straight literary stuff. And, to back up a little bit, I really have always been interested in the West that is, Gary Cooper was from Helena. He looked good in a
yeah.
suit too. In videos, film from Butte in 1918 of crowd scenes, there are no cowboy hats.
Oh, wow.
There just aren't.
Yeah.
And it's a wide and varied place, and it always has been. But in terms of defining success, it's just defining it on a national stage. It's
Yeah.
being sold everywhere.
Yeah.
It's avoiding typecasting wherever possible.
Right.
Um, I know that sometimes you have to play to it, and some series do, and I bet I would do better, have done better if I had played to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
not accusing CJ Box or anybody of doing anything, but I think, say, Hillerman was a great example of somebody who used place but didn't meet expectations.
Right.
Sort of had to, really examine that world. But that's, yeah, what I'm trying to think. No, I mean, Western writers are just like anybody else. Half of them live out here now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
How
and it,
many writers does Livingston have? So many.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's one thing that strikes me too with a lot of the interviews we've done is most of the great writers who write about the West live in the West, and it's just something that seems to permeate every aspect of their writing. And I think gone are the days of like the mid-century where you could have writers in New York City writing about cowboys and Colorado without ever having stepped foot near that area
Yeah.
because it really didn't
No,
matter,
no.
I wanted to
So
ask.
there've been,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, it's changing the question,
Well,
please.
there've been a few novels lately, and now I'm trying to think, and this probably isn't worth including, where people have been going back to the 19th century, and they are writers out of Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and they're writing about journeys, they're writing about, and I'm completely forgetting who wrote Trust. Great novel. I think it won the National Book Award, but he wrote about a journey from California, basically
Okay.
back east in 1820 and or 1850, and it was fascinating, but it was a little off. Every once in
Hmm.
a while you read, I think it's really hard at the West, right? If you don't live here, if you don't
Right.
spend time here.
Yeah.
It's something as simple as saying he went outside and it's February and you know he's going to die, but he doesn't die. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not thinking of the environment hard
Right.
enough and what it really means. Anyway,
Exactly.
sorry for that segue.
Oh no, no, of course. I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask too, decades of living and breathing the West, what keeps you coming back to it as really, not only a setting of your stories, but kind of that driving force, especially in your Blue Deer novels.
Maybe because it is a place that is full of change and it's filled with people who are in flux.
Hmm.
I don't have that much interest in just writing about a town where everybody's always lived and the problems that result from that. Do you know what I
Right,
mean? I
right,
don't want to write about a fairly insular uh, New England town
right.
and its traditions. I really like the fact that in the West, it all gets ripped up and sort of put back together again. There is a tradition,
I
but so
love
many
it.
things, every new entry into a town changes the town a little bit,
Yeah,
tweaks it a little bit, and changes the mood and changes. I don't know. I like
yeah.
change,
Even back
even
into
though I
the
haven't moved in 40 years. So
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah,
Well, even, harkens back to, the lone rider coming into the Western town. No one knows, and it
exactly.
upends everything they thought. It's the
Right,
Western trope. Uh,
right.
but yeah, it's so interesting, and you can see that permeate throughout most Western novels. It's just this smattering of different people with different ideas and beliefs, and the chaos that ensues after.
Well, the chaos and the kind of darkness. I mean, trying to think of the director who said the Western noir is somebody hitchhiking 5 miles on an empty highway 5 miles away from the prison.
Yeah,
That's noir here. It's not
that
city, it's not alleys, it's not this and that. It can be bleak, it can be spooky, it can be great. It's
yeah.
a great setting for horror novels. People have started doing that too.
Yeah. Well, what amazes me as well is that the West is so vast. There's more cows than people in some of these places, and yet all these
Yeah.
people manage to find their way together. We just can't stay apart.
Yes. There are still bars. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Schools and
Yeah.
bars.
Yeah. Yeah. More
Uh,
bars than churches usually. So
yeah, there you go. Well, my final question, I'd just love to, you've mentioned a couple of times, I'd love to know any projects that you have in the work, and is there anything that you can give fans to whet their appetites for any? of your work coming up?
Um, I'm working on a novel called Blue Ghosts. It's a Jules novel,
Okay.
and it is I'm getting close to having a really good first draft rather than the rough mess I've been working on. And it's actually about a friend of Jules's who disappears on a archaeological expedition when he's in his late 20s, 10
Wow.
years earlier,
Wow.
and his bones showing up.
Oh.
And dealing with that, and then also dealing with what we have out here is a sort of particularly interesting kind of thing in banks. We still have safe deposit boxes, but
Mm.
they're not like the Spike Lee Inside Man safe deposit
Okay.
boxes. You walk in, you rarely have to show your ID, you rarely have to do anything. Either they know you or they trust you or whatever, but I'd say the lack of security has just blown my mind. And I'm writing something about a con with some safe deposit boxes in the same novel. And I want to write something that goes back to the characters from The Widow Nash
Mm.
and The Center of Everything, the characters of Henning and Dulcie.
Okay.
And one part of that would be set in LA in 1918.
Wow,
So,
interesting. One foot in the past
um,
always.
yeah, one past.
I love it.
It's
Well,
a rich
Jamie, thank
place. So,
yeah, that's right. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful to talk your books and the West and writing, and we're eagerly anticipating the next Jules novel. And until then, do you have anywhere online fans can find you or anything like that that you'd like to add?
have a slightly out of sight website. How's that?
Oh, I
I'm on
love it.
Instagram, but I'm mostly Instagram, the website, sometimes Facebook, sometimes the all the others. It's what you
Perfect.
got to do.
That's
So,
right. You got to be a
thanks,
little
Tyler.
little everywhere.
Really enjoyed the questions. Thanks so
Thank you so
much.
much. Well, it's great talking to you.
Yeah.
Have a great day.